Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 193 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dale here with Pankaj Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, 2024 is wrapping up. We're in the final week of 2024, nearly the new year, and 2025 is now on the horizon. What a year 2024 has been for Flesh and Blood. And with the new year approaching, bringing new sets, new events, new cards, new heroes, and a lot of other new things, we thought what better time than on this week's pod to take a look forward at 2025 in Flesh and Blood. Pankaj.
Super looking forward to engaging in that discourse and trying to figure out what's coming up and how we can prepare for it and how excited we are for the things that are happening in 2025. Real quick, before we get into the main topic, just want to point out there is no place for hate in our community, and I just want to shout out James White for dealing with the situation very, very swiftly and very, very definitively. And yeah, we love that.
You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Well, Pankaj, before we get into everything on the pod this week, we have to hear about your week in Flesh and Blood. It's a quiet part of the year. We were talking before we came on the pod about downtime and how nice this is. So I know you haven't been playing Flesh and Blood, but what else have you been doing?
So I went skiing for the first time ever. Never skied. I mean, obviously in Singapore, we don't really get snow. So not too many opportunities growing up to go skiing. And also the past few years over the winters, I've usually gone home. But this time I'm staying in Seattle for over Christmas break, and I managed to go skiing for the first time. So that was fun. It was a lot more tiring than I expected it to be. I think because especially the first time you're learning, like taking the lift up to like the big slopes yet. I was just kind of like walking a little bit uphill and then skiing down. And walking uphill in the snow on skis is exhausting. So I was surprised at how tiring it was.
It's hard. People underestimate snow sports, I think, because it's like, well, you take the chairlift up to the top and then you just ride the downhill all the way down. But people don't realize, whether you're a snowboarder or a skier, I'm a snowboarder personally, just the toll it takes on like your ankles, your calves, your quads, your legs, just in general, from like all, you're especially, I think when you first start, because you're so stiff, because you're trying to, you're trying to make sure you don't fall over. So you're really like, you stay quite stiff, I think. But yeah, did you enjoy it? Did you have fun?
Yeah, I did. Not entirely sure if I would go again, to be honest. I did have fun, but there was like a lot of, how do I say it? Not sure if the juice was worth the squeeze in that front, in terms of got to travel all the way there, get the equipment and do all this to skate down the slope effectively. So I did used to rollerblade. So in that sense, like the skiing part of it did come a little bit easier to me than some of the other people like in the class. I signed up for a group lesson because I was told don't try and YOLO it the first time, so that was useful. But I was kind of just like, but I could just like rollerblade, and it feels like fairly similar. Other than that, I had a Christmas dinner at one of our locals' place again. One of our locals hosted at his place. Made some nice food. It was a bit of a potluck. People brought like desserts. I brought some wine. It's actually people know him. He made top 8 at Calling Portland. Taminder, the Dash.io player.
Oh, the Dash.io.
So shout out to Minder for shout out him for hosting us for a nice little Christmas dinner. It was a really good time.
Very nice. And where did you in terms of your skiing, where did you go? Which ski field did you go to?
It's Snoqualmie. It's like a slightly less than an hour drive away from me here.
Okay.
Snoqualmie Summit West specifically was like the I don't know what to call it, the place. Yeah. Cool. How was your week?
Week was good. Christmas, Christmas Day was fairly quiet. I wouldn't say I don't celebrate. I mean, for Christmas for me is like family and friends. That's what Christmas is for me and for our household. So we spent some time with friends. We spent some time, me and my fiance, on Christmas Day. It's just the two of us family-wise that live here in Sydney, Australia. So that was nice. It's always funny for people who aren't from the Southern Hemisphere, but it was a nice, sunny, hot, 30 degrees Celsius, what is that, like 88, 90, whatever it is, 85 maybe, Fahrenheit. So a really nice day, beautiful day. And yeah, that's kind of been it for me. I was saying to you before we jumped the pod, been watching a lot of movies, a lot of new things coming out, playing a little bit of games, spending time with friends, doing a little bit of running. It really is downtime from Flesh and Blood, which I'm enjoying because I think these downtimes really invigorate my passion for playing, I think, when I come back to it. I think avoiding that burnout, which we've spoken about on the pod before, but I think it is really important to have that downtime. And I'm getting excited for the Hunted. It's only a couple of weeks away, and then we'll be straight back into it'll be, we're going to talk about it on the pod today in terms of what's happening in 2025, but it's going to be a blistering pace again of events and tier 3 and tier 4 events and qualifiers and things kicking off. So soon it will be a busy period of Flesh and Blood.
I completely agree. This downtime is super, I appreciate it a lot, for sure. I think this past year has been that same blistering pace that next year is shaping up to be. But next year might even be a little bit faster. So just having this break to, just restore the energy and passion for the game, if you will. And also, I'm with you on, it's making me even more excited for Hunted that's coming out. I can't wait for spoilers.
Yeah. Wow.
So
I was going to say, speaking of.
Yeah. Speaking of, yes. So I'm going to go into the news now. And we're going to remind everyone that our preview, the Arsenal Pass preview, is coming up on the 17th of January. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And in terms of competitive play, we've got a double header next weekend. Hong Kong and Atlanta, battle-hardened. Both classic constructed happening the weekend of 3rd, 4th January.
I think that's what's important about these battle hardens as we enter into January before we get into the road to national season very shortly is the living legend points. I think that is what is most interesting to me. I think in terms of what this meta is going to look like pre-hunted, I mean, it's kind of honestly it's irrelevant, right, for the next few months of Flesh and Blood and for road to national season, PT London, things like that. But what is important is the living legend points that come out of these events. So yeah, looking forward to seeing which of the MST heroes will get the next lot of living legend points.
Yeah, it's relevant from the aspect of what the meta will look like after this sort of the next few competitive events. Aside from that, we also had a ban and suspended change last week, and there were no changes. With the next ban and restricted announcement going to be on Tuesday, March 4th, which is quite a while away, Hayden. It's like more than a month after Hunter's release, so they're giving a bit of time for people to figure out if there's anything absolutely busted in that set before they try and hit anything, which I do like. I do think there should be time for people to figure out busted stuff and also figure out counters before you go ahead and try and fix it, right, with in the big brother sense, it's like the outside force coming in and fixing it.
I also think that's the end of Road to National season, right? So they're basically committing to no changes as it stands for Road to National season. Let the Hunter release. 2 weeks after Hunter releases, we're actually even 1 week after, we're into Road to National season, which I really like. Very cool. We've spoken about this before, but I do like it. I am with it. It's going to be great to see. And then ban and suspended announcement, and then we go towards PT London in April, I think, right? So yeah, it's looking forward to
that. Next, we are going to announce our giveaway winners for the playsets of Scarf for Scarves. So the first one, we have Semnem1 Gnome. I think that's how you pronounce it. With the comment, no doubt your preview is that one Riptide spec that he needs so much. Dude is going to be crazy now. I wish. Hopefully a Riptide specialization bow. I'd be very happy with that one.
Yeah, Pankaj is hanging out for it. So, what are they winning? What is Semnem1 Gnome winning?
They're winning a playset of Scarf for Scarves.
All right.
Yep. Next, we have XX Mewtwo096. Surely the preview card will be a Kasai specialization. It's going to be a 0-cost blue attack reaction with 3 block that says, sword attacks get +2, the damage can't be prevented. When this hits an illusionist opponent, that player loses the game. This will be the aid Kasai needed to have a reasonable matchup against illusionists. This was actually my submission for a custom card, straight to LSS. Unfortunately, they rejected it, but yeah. Congrats on on winning the giveaway, XX Mewtwo096.
I have a question about that one. Congrats on your Scarf for Scarves. What percentage of a matchup does Kasai vs Enigma become if that card gets printed?
It goes from 0% to 10%.
I would give it like 40 to 50, surely.
And then finally, we also have a playset of Scarf for Scarves plus the playmat winner, which is PVE Gamer 3905. So congratulations on that one. And this one's a bit of a longer, very, very big commitment to this comment. As your next preview card will be a young hero. LSS is targeting the Japanese market and has a penchant. Man, how do I pronounce it?
Penchant
for wrestling.
Yeah.
Penchant for wrestling. This set features the Draconic Talent. You will be previewing Inoki, the Emperor's Chef, Draconic Brute. You may only include cards with a 0 block value in your deck. Coming from a family that has served the Emperor faithfully for generations, Inoki's entire life shatters when the Emperor is assassinated. Rejected from joining the hunt for Arachne with the military, blind rage overtakes him and he begins tracking the assassin on his own. Armed only with the Flamescale Furnace, used for ceremonial purposes, and the Rock, typically used for grinding herbs in the kitchen, Inoki sets out for revenge.
I mean, what a submission, what an entry. I think well-deserved winner there. Congratulations. And look, I'm always excited for spicy brute action, so bring it on. I'd love
Especially if the brute's using the Rock, right?
Wow, exactly.
Did you ever play around with that? Did you try and solve Rock Rhina or Rock Brute at any point?
Well, yeah, no, I tried to solve it. I looked at the card, read the card 3 or 4 times, and then moved on with my life.
That's how you solved it. Nice.
Unfortunately.
So you didn't try. You didn't try any of the Talisman of Ignition stuff.
No. I'm not a gimmick gamer. I do enjoy cool stuff and fun combo-y stuff, but not so much gimmicks, unfortunately. They don't pay off.
Unless that gimmick is count your blessings. But yeah, anyway, moving on.
Well, if the gimmick's really powerful, I'm in. Sure.
All right, so we're going to move on to the command and Cookout. Before we get into it, a reminder that you can get your questions in for the pod via YouTube comments or emailing us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. Also by messaging us on Discord or at an event if you see us. This question comes from Krusenstein. Our group consists of casuals and we occasionally play sealed games. Nevertheless, we have decided to visit our first big tournament in Prague with the world premiere of The Hunted. There's 3 of us. We are neither very experienced, nor will we have a lot of time for preparation. The booking came with the world premiere, 1 silver and 2 bronze tickets for side events. With your tournament experience, which side events should we prepare for with the little time we have? Like Blitz, Classic Constructed, Living Legend, etc. To have the games fit well into our schedule. And ideally be able to take some goodies from the prize wall with us and have time to look around and enjoy the venue. Do you have any thoughts on this, Hayden? I guess I wonder how much thoughts you have in this, given that you're always playing the main event.
So I thought about this. I like this question because I like these sorts of questions. It's a different aspect to going to events. So I thought, first of all, I would give my view on going to an event like the world premiere, and then I thought we could discuss, and keen to hear yours as well, and then I thought we could discuss, from Krusenstein's perspective and maybe give some of our thoughts. Obviously, having been to quite a few of these events, I have obviously looked at the schedules, and I have played side events, but I think for me, when I go to these events, let's say it's a world premiere, for me, I'm going for the world premiere experience, which is really cool, and I'm going for, primarily I'm going for the calling. And for me, when I go to the calling, the world premiere is like, you have to play that because you're disadvantaged if you don't play it. Like it's an amazing event, and I do love playing them, and it's so much fun because you get hands on these new cards and you're working out what's, the interactions, and then you go back afterwards with your group and you like break down all your pools and you like talk about interactions and you play different games and you discover different things about the set, which is really cool when it's just come out, right? That's such an amazing experience. But for me, the primary focus is like the calling and then play the world premiere plus as many sealed like side events or draft side events as I can over the weekend where they fit to be able to get exposure and experience with this new set. That's kind of the way I look at it, right? What about you? How do you kind of approach events like these?
Well, so typically my position at these big events is being in the coverage booth. So I kind of have my time laid out for me, planned out for me. But with regards to this question, the way I'd look at it is I'd look at the tourist activities that you want to do. So I don't know too much about the tourist attractions in Prague, or even the ones that you might want to do. But like for Barcelona, for example, the Sigarda was something a lot of people want to go see. And it's typically something you need to go get tickets for beforehand, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'll do is look at the tourist activities you want to do, get the tickets for them that you can, still find. And based on those timings, then you look at the event schedule for this world premiere weekend, and then pick the events that you can actually fit around your tickets for the touristy things that you want to do. Because it sounds like a little bit time constrained in that sense. So that's the way I would organize this. And then you can and then at that point, it's like your formats are sort of picked for you, right? Like some of them will be sealed, some of them will be CC, and if you're signing, and if you're like, oh, this fits in my schedule, then you bring a CC deck for that one. Or if it's a sealed thing, then you don't need to bring anything.
Yeah,
that's where I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I massively agree. If your main thing to be there is to play the World Premiere first and foremost, then lock yourself in for the World Premiere, and then work out what you want to do around that. So if that is the tourist activities, like you say, and honestly, I would say this is my view, and I'd be interested to hear your view, but playing side events at these kind of events, for me, it's not actually about the format I'm playing. It's about the games I'm playing. It's about the people I'm playing against, honestly. I have had some of my most enjoyable games at Pro Tours, at Callings, when I play these, when I get the chance to play side events. Like I say, it's not generally a focus for me, but I've bombed out of Pro Tours before. I've not made, day 2 of a Calling or whatever it might be, or I've had time after a Calling on day 2 because, generally the kind of Swiss rounds finish by about like 1 o'clock, and then I'll play side events, or same thing at like Worlds or the Pro Tour to get the the promos, the promo cards that are associated with that event, like the Sagrada sigils, for instance. And those have been some of my most enjoyable experiences because you get to meet people that you've often never met before, or you sometimes even play against people you have played against before, and that's just as great. And the format is, I just play whatever I like at these, when I go and play these side events, or whatever is relative to like the prizes I'm interested in, if it's like those participation promos, for instance. So I definitely recommend checking out what are the things you're interested in, like getting, whether it be like you want to play the double up events to get more tickets for the prize wall, for instance, or maybe you do really have a format that you love to play, then play that and get to have some great experiences against players. But for me, it's kind of like the experience, the games themselves, and then the format for me is honestly kind of last. And then somewhere in that, the prizes or like the tickets that are given out is somewhat relevant to me, but not the end. Like for me personally, I'm always like, where are the draft side events? Like I'm always keen. I'm like, I'll often walk up if I have free time. So for instance, after Calling at Worlds this year in Osaka, I didn't make top 8, finished like top 16, and then I had like 5 hours to kill because some people were still playing the main event, like Worlds. My friend Dan was still playing Worlds, and so I just went up to the draft like line at the side event. I was like, how many people signed up for draft right now? And they're like, oh, only 2 people signed up. I'm like, look, I would love to draft right now. That's what's driving me, is a chance to sit around a table with people from around the world that I maybe haven't met before, or some that I have. Draft is my favorite format, and just get that experience. And people are like, why do you want to draft? Haven't you just been like spending like months playing this format and drafting? I'm like, yeah, but I don't care about the format. I care about the experience. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that little view from me.
Now that you bring that up, I realize that some of my most memorable games at these events have also just been the side event stuff. Right. Well, I guess to be fair, that's kind of the only games I am playing at these things. But I do cherish the few times where the main event ends a little bit earlier. We get our coverage a little bit earlier, and I get to like sneak into like one of the CC side events in the evening. I did that actually most recently at Calling Chicago. Mm-hmm. Day 1, we ended a little bit early. There's a double up CC event afterwards. I signed up for that and just had a blast. It's like, I had my new deck on me. I was playing that. Barcelona, I did the same with Iceland. It was legal back then, and I got a Sigarda sigil at the side event. So aside from, I guess, coming back to the question, aside from looking around the touristy stuff that you want to do and working around that schedule, kind of just pick the format that you enjoy the most. It's not like, as you said, Hayden, it's not super important, the format itself. It's everything else around it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Great question. I love that question. I love these kind of questions. I'm really looking forward to, I think we're going to do a mailbag episode sometime in the next month or two, and these are the sorts of questions that I love that aren't just how to be good at X or how to do X. Like I love these kind of like, hey, you've been to a lot of events. What's it like for you? What are the things you look for, or what do you like to do? I'm just rereading the question. I think we've answered like Krisenstein's question. Like, set up your list of what you want to do, whether that's World Premiere, then tourist activities plus side events, and then make it work. Like I say, honestly, all the side events are pretty cool, but I would look out for those kind of exclusive promos because I think that's such a fun thing to have. I think a little thing to take away from the event as well.
Yep. The nice thing is that the schedule is all planned beforehand. Like you can go see the schedule of events beforehand, which makes it very easy to work around, like whatever else you want to do in the area.
If it's not already up, then it'll be up very soon. If it's not already up, but usually the event organizer's website will have that pretty early on. I usually find it's like a month to 6 weeks before.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, if you want to get your questions in, as Pankaj says, drop us a line and get in the queue. We've got a few questions, but we're always looking for fun and exciting questions. I know Pankaj has got a handwritten or a note question from an event to share with us maybe next week as well.
All right. It was verbal, actually. But
verbal. Okay, all right, even better. Old school.
So I had to note it down before I forget. Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the outlook for 2025 in Flesh and Blood, and we've just come off a hot year. I mean, every year probably is going to be the biggest year in Flesh and Blood, right? So it's a bit of I guess it's funny to say the biggest year of Flesh and Blood is coming, but the prize pool was increased for the World Tour. It's called the World Tour now. There's a little bit more of a, I think this is something that we've always been looking for. Particularly, I'm speaking from like probably mine and Brendan's perspective, but I think you share something similar to this, which is this narrative around the pro level events, right? And creating, we're going to have a World Player of the Year. We're going to have this World Tour fleshed out a bit more, and also we've just got a lot of events at the grassroots level as well, from Tier 1 all the way right through to Tier 4. So, Pankaj, I think the best place to start when we talk about the outlook for 2025, the things we're excited about, things we're looking forward to, is probably to start with product, right? We can break this down to product and events, and I think we got to start with product. I'm going to list off what's coming this year, and then let's have a bit of a chat about it. So January, we already know. We've got the Hunted. Set number 15 releases. Set number 16, which we've yet to have a name for, is releasing in June of 2025. So presumably this is going to be just before Nationals, which we can talk about. And then Set 17, likely to be released in September based on the World Premiere month. So would follow unless for some reason it ends up in like the first week of October. And then we also have a few more Armory decks. We don't know which heroes yet, but we know there's one for March, one for April, one for May, one for July. And we also have the talked about Mastery Pack Guardian, which has been delayed out to August. Thoughts on these products and the amount of products coming?
So real quick before we go into the amount of products, the one thing that stuck out to me the most looking at the schedule is the gap between set 15, which is Hunted, and set 16. Set 16 comes out in June, and Hunted's coming out in January. That's a very big gap. I believe this year, MST came out somewhere early in May, right? So this is like a month. Yeah, so this is like a month later, and importantly, it's just before Nationals, because Nationals is in the June period. So that's the thing that sticks out to me the most. I'm like, ooh, we're going to have this set release and then go straight into national season.
Do you think that's potentially the reason why? Is a little bit more set alignment with event alignment? That's exciting to think that we're going to get a new set just before Nationals.
Yeah, in a sense, we sort of had that this year too, right? With MST. It did feel like MST, and maybe there was a bit more breathing room, but there definitely was the narrative of people hadn't quite realized how broken Zen was when Nat season happened. It was US Nats that kind of kicked off the, oh my god, Zen is broken. And then everyone starts playing it, and it had to be like hit before Amsterdam, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit, I guess my view is a little bit skewed because Evan, who won US Nats, was a part of the wider group I was testing with, and everyone was really clear that Zen was just insane. So I guess maybe I was a little bit clouded on that. But I think it was, and US Nats was also the first Nationals event. It was kind of like US Nationals, then Nationals happened. US Nationals was the big spectacle. It's the most amount of players from a Nationals event. So it was a week before Nationals actually officially kicked off from around the world. It was on its own weekend with the calling. So yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think from memory, it was about 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in that period. I definitely remember like getting a number of drafts in, sitting with the set for a little bit, enough to like go through like New Illusion Sigma seems really good. Oh, Zen's way too powerful. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Actually, I remember the cycle too. Actually, I remember the first couple of weeks I was just dooming about Enigma, because obviously.
Oh, you're one of them.
And then, I was completely dooming because at that point you're practicing to KO and stuff, right? And it's just like Enigma at the time was also playing Spectra, which is really good into KO because you force them to roll scabs and they'll whiff at some point and then you just win. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, this is terrible. And you're playing Zen, and it's like, we're trying to do head leads the tail, roar of the tiger stuff. And like, this is so bad. It doesn't work. It doesn't beat the illusionist. I remember that. But I think you're right. It was like, it seemed like there were more weeks between MST release and the start of national season compared to set 16, which is coming out in June, and national season, which is also going to be in June. So that'll be interesting. And to your point about, is that something they want? I could see it. I think they do try and avoid having that for tier 4 events. Like, I don't think they're going to want to have a set release and then have that be like 2 weeks before Pro Tour, right? And you can see that with the Hunted. Hunted's coming out in January and Pro Tour's in April. So there's enough time for people to play with the set and figure out the good things happening in the format, figure out counters and stuff like that. But Nats is a tier 3 event, right? It is a step down from Pro Tours and World Championships. So maybe it's a bit of an experiment, or maybe they're just like, you know what, it's fine to have a big event right after we just dropped a set.
Well, they're doing it with tier 3s this year, so they're doing it with callings as well. I would say, callings obviously tier 3, so they have been doing it with callings to an extent. If I look at upcoming calling, the Hunted, and then the week of release. Wait, the week after release, we've got Calling Christchurch, which is class constructed. So
also Memphis.
Yes, sorry, Memphis.
Memphis is the weekend off release.
The weekend off, which they did with the last set as well, right? They did that with Rosetta, right? Yeah. It was the week after release though, in that case. So we've started to see it with tier 3 events, but not tier 4 like you say, and even if you extrapolate that out to we've got ProQuest season coming through in October. Well, it looks like this set 17 is going to be released in September, so would follow, and we're going to get that for Road to Nationals this year, right? We're going to get the Hunted, and then the week after release we're going to kick into Road to Nationals season. So it really feels like the product and the World Tour / Premier Play schedule are really aligned for this year, and I think this is something that they've always had the vision of doing, and we'll talk about the schedule shortly. I think they've always had this view. It's just been logistically, and obviously they started the Pro Tour scene, or the Premier Play, now known as the World Tour. I'm just going to call it the World Tour from now on. But when they first had the first couple of years of World Tour, you got to think we've only had 3 World Championships at this point. There was still a lot of logistical issues around the world, right? With freight, with product, with being able to manufacture, and I think they've obviously just LSS have expanded massively. They have a big a team working on this now, and I think they've now finally been able to, for 2025, realize their vision of aligning product with Premier Play, and I think this is super exciting.
We are a long way away from the early days where you'd go play a ProQuest and not know where the Pro Tour is that you are qualifying for. We are very, very long way from that, and this is awesome. The progression, as you say, over the past few years, like seeing how much more far in advance we have this information for products, for events, it's incredible. And definitely, they should be commended about that, because there were lots of valid complaints back at the time, and they have fixed them in ways that's very satisfying. And so just want to shout out that commendation for that.
No, I'm right there. I mean, you say a long way away from it. I mean, where I guess, in terms of what's happening, like the effort and the end product, we are a long way, but time-wise, we're actually not, it's only last year, right? 2023, Worlds Barcelona, we still didn't know a lot about Premier Play for 2024, and that obviously that feedback was given, and they announced for the first half of the year, but we didn't know where Worlds was going to be, we didn't know a lot of things, and then for this year, they're like, nope, this is the roadmap for 2025, this is the Pro Tours. We don't know exactly where in APAC, but we know the month, and we know it's in Asia Pacific, and we know Worlds is in US and in what month. So that is, I agree, it's a massive move on. And like we talk about, I think it just has been about this aligning product with, I think what they were trying to do is they knew their product roadmap last year, right? And they were trying to align the Premier Play World Tour with it, and they just couldn't get it done as quickly as they wanted. And I think the team expanding and all those things, they've just finally been able to nail it. So yeah, I agree. Shout out to the team at LSS. Also, just on that, did you see they put up a Christmas photo and a thank you for the year up on the Fab TCG website? And the amount of people now working for LSS is just insane. When I think back to when I first met basically most of the entire team at some of the first events, like less than a dozen people, and now from that photo, look like they're about 80 plus people, which is just insane at head office. So shout outs to them.
That is awesome. And I mean, you can also see the fruits of all that labor and all that growth, right?
Yeah.
With exactly what we're talking about, quality of the products, the timeliness of getting the information out to us and everything. Coming back to the product real quick. So we spoke about how set 16 coming out in June, set 15 Hunted coming out in January. So there's a big gap between that. Yeah. But in that gap, there are 3 Armory decks coming out. There's one in March, one in April, and one in May. So it's not that we'll be completely sort of not having any new injections into the format. We'll be having those. And also, actually, something that's very important to point out, with the way the LL leaderboard currently looks, we're going to have a lot of LLs in between that period as well, especially with Road to National season happening then. So there will still be a lot of format shakeups despite the next draft product coming out 5 months after Hunted.
A ProQuest season 2. Season 2.
Yeah, and a ProQuest season as well. So lots of LLs and these Armory decks. Though, I guess going by this year's Armory decks, I'm not sure how much to expect that they like shake up the format. Like Dash.io was the one that shook it up, but
not at all, or kind of all the way.
Yeah, which I think people will be appreciative of, actually. I'm not saying I want these to shake up the format, but I'm just pointing out that there's product coming out in between these two sets.
Yeah, no, it's a really good chat. And I think what's interesting is when you just look at it as a whole year, Hunted in January, like you say, you've got these Armory decks coming out March, April, May, July as well that we know. And then you've got set 16 just in the midst there in June. And then you look forward to, okay, August we've got Mastery Pack, and then September the next set, and then there's probably something else before the end of the year, maybe even another Armory deck, and then we're at the end of the year. Like, I guess I was asking, like the amount of product this year, but even I just look at the spacing of product this year, and it feels in a much better place than it has been, and I think that's exciting for someone who, from my perspective, someone who is focused on the competitive side of the game, because I feel like, okay, I'm not getting any product between November and mid-January. Cool. I like that. That means I get a true, like we just spoke about, a true downtime. I do you remember, I go back to 2022, I want to say, and Dynasty coming out in December.
It came out December?
It came out December. I'm gonna Google this.
I don't know when it came out.
It came out in like the worst time, and it was just like, I just remember being like, well, I want to play like Armory so I can play with this, but I remember getting into the start of that competitive year and being like, I feel burnt out because I haven't had a break from playing Flesh and Blood because I was so excited about playing Hanabi Blaster Dash at all these armories I could go to. I'm going to quickly look this up because I need to fact check myself.
That's a very interesting point, because we've been talking about
mid-November 2022.
November.
Yeah. So But I feel like that's really late. I remember it feeling really late, so I'm glad that it looks like, I think, what's the last product we got this year? It would have been Jarl, right? Which was obviously late November, early December, but it's not a set. The last set we got was October? Rosetta? Yeah, October.
Rosetta? Was it October?
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting point, because just now we were talking about the downtime in terms of events and competing at things.
September.
But there's also a very important parallel that's also the product release as well.
Yeah.
That there's not too much important products being released in the November-December timeframe, which is also very, very useful for getting just the break that people need. I also want to come back to the amount of product discussion over here. I remember at first when they announced Armory decks and the consistency at which they want to release them. Like, this is quite a few Armory decks that we've gotten this year and we're going to get next year too. I remember being a little bit worried about product fatigue. Like, that's a term I've heard thrown around in some other games, some other TCGs that are going down this route. And I feel somehow, looking at how this past year has gone, they've landed in this space where there is new product coming out, but I'm not entirely sure if I feel product fatigue, because I actually just didn't engage with a lot of these Armory decks because I wasn't interested in those classes. But there are people who were interested in those classes. They had some sort of impact in the game, like Savage Sash came out in an Armory deck, and Dash.io, obviously. So it's like, I don't know, like, I want to talk about the product fatigue, or whether they found a balance on being able to inject new stuff in between the sets without burning people out from products. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't really engage too much with the Armory decks, and maybe there's players outside of our sphere that have a bit of a different, so maybe it's the collectors might have a bit of a different viewpoint on that. But I think these products are important. Like, I think they are important too. I don't know if they've fully achieved their goal of these being a new player product that can bring people in at the Armory level, but I think it's done it. It has definitely had an impact, which I think is great. I just know anecdotally that it has, but whether it's had quite the impact, I don't think maybe to the extent that it would want it to. But there's still time, right? It's not, it's still a new product. But yeah, I mean, for instance, apparently there's a Bolton Armory deck. Who knew? Like there's things like, I didn't engage with it because let's just say I didn't need to. But that's from my perspective. There might be other perspectives out there.
Mm-hmm. But I did, but I did sort of like that I didn't need to. I liked that there was product coming out, but not product that I had to engage with.
Agree.
In that sense.
Yeah. I massively agree. I think what's interesting to me though about this, we won't release product, and LSS haven't said this. We're just inferring this from the release dates of the last 2 years. No product between early November and mid-January. Jarl came out this year. I'm interested to see what they do, because I think that as a company who needs to make money and wants to grow their market share, releasing a product in November sort of, especially early November, given consumer shopping habits have changed, and November is a massive shopping month as opposed to maybe where December used to be in the past, is kind of, a big opportunity that you want to take and use in the right ways for your game. And I think at the moment, maybe they're just not sure the right way to use it. I honestly think that's why they released Dynasty in November last time. It was like great, Christmas coming up, gifting period, Thanksgiving, holiday period, all these things, right? We can leverage Dynasty. And I don't think that obviously played out that way for potentially other reasons. But I am really interested to see what they do with that sort of consumer lens of releasing product at that really prime time of year. And I think the Mastery Packs might be the one that, for me, looks like the product that might be best set up to be released then. But we'll see. Obviously, we know Mastery Pack Guardian coming out in August was late. I think originally it was meant to come out middle of the year, sort of June, July time, right? So they've already shifted that. My question is, do we know why they shifted that? They spoke about, was there reasoning around like distribution?
I don't recall seeing any reasoning, but I might have just missed it.
Because it makes sense for August. Like that, when you look at it, it looks perfect in August, realistically, when you look at the release schedule. And had it been earlier, I just wonder if they thought it was going to be earlier, wanted it to be earlier, realized it wasn't going to work with the rest of the release schedule, and then just moved it as opposed to specific challenges. But that's just me speculating. I actually don't know.
So we were talking about how they're releasing product, but not necessarily increasing product fatigue with like the armory decks and stuff. The Mastery Pack, though, that's where maybe this conversation shifts slightly towards that. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to tell because we also
don't know, right?
All, but it does feel like the quantity of it does feel like to the level of almost like a booster set, like near that level, maybe like expansion set of like a few years ago.
Yeah, like
that level of impact in the sense that it is a major product release, but it's only for a single class. So once again, you could just have a whole bunch of people that can just choose not to engage with it. So I'm fascinated. I'm very excited to see how this shakes out in terms of like the balance between impact and people engaging with this.
Yeah, me too. Like if there's a sliding scale of 0 engagement to 100% engagement, when a product releases, where do people feel like they have to land on that scale? And I would say, in the past, especially, actually not even in the past, just even with these current sets, because of the expansion card slot, it feels like almost every main set, so the 3 sets set for this year, 15, 16, 17, the 100, 16, 17, that scale is going to be pretty high for most players because it's a limited set. So a lot of people are going to be playing it sealed, draft, etc. It's going to introduce heroes that have a big impact on the meta, or at least some impact on the meta. It's going to have expansion slots that even go outside of those classes and talents that are being released. So I would say the kind of need or want or feeling that you need to interact with that product is going to be very high for almost the majority of players. Whereas, these armory decks, they're on the other end of the scale, right? Mastery Pack, it's Guardian specific. So it does feel like it's going to land somewhere in between. Which side of that divide is going to be interesting, and maybe they just nail it and it just lands somewhere perfectly in between, which would be the end goal for them, right? Is like they release this product, it has wide appeal and people pick this product up. But so far from like the other I guess Mastery Packs we've seen, all these they are called Mastery Packs, right? Like these like 5 card booster packs that we saw released in Japan around the time of the World Championships. Are they called Mastery Packs?
I thought they were called like Archive.
Archive, sorry. Archive, yes. No, yeah, you're right. But for those, for instance, right, are they more like that? They're not more like that product because they introduced new cards, right? So they're definitely more, they have more interaction than those. But I just wonder how happy LSS have been with that kind, because that's the other thing we haven't spoken about. We don't know what else they're going to be doing, or maybe they have, but we haven't spoken about that. That's other product as well. But again, that interaction potential is even possibly a lot lower. It's a different kind of market strategy. It's about bringing cards to the market for these other languages and in ways people possibly couldn't get them before. Whereas something like the Mastery Pack Guardian, even the armory decks, and especially these new core sets, are new products. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I feel like they're doing a really good job around product fatigue right now. That's just my kind of conclusion I'm coming to at the moment.
I agree. That's my take as well for so far this year. Mastery Pack is something I'm optimistic for, despite someone who's not going to play Guardian at all. What I'm looking forward to is it having an impact, enough of an impact that Guardian comes out to play. People who want to engage with Guardian come in and are allowed to play the class again and get to go compete with it. But it's not to the power level that everyone needs to like pivot to it. But everyone else needs to, in some form, engage or react to it because now it's a part of a meta. And then now they need to have plans for Guardian again, or make sure they have strategies to beat it, or adapt their strategies for this meta shift, in a sense. And like to me, that's the sweet spot for where something like Mastery Pack can land, where people are excited about the class, can go ahead and engage with it and play with it, and they want to engage and play with it. And the others need to react to it, but they're not forced to go engage with it because it's super strong.
Yeah, right. Like an Illusion Mastery Pack right now would probably be the worst thing they could print, honestly. And I'm not just saying that to Pankaj's benefit. I think, you look at, especially recent history, Dromai into Enigma. Like, is that the product that the players need or even want right now? And I think the answer is no. Guardian, on the other hand, I think is, a perfect landing point for this first kind of Mastery Pack. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like, Runeblade be potentially the function of the next, or even Warrior is a tough one because of a lot of things around the class structure and the heroes. I think it's a lot tougher, but anyway, it'd be interesting to see where they go next with Mastery Packs.
There was also Prism in between Dromai and Enigma, actually.
Yeah.
Which was
has
really annoying the heavy hitters meta.
Yeah,
which
had impact.
It definitely was a play. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I guess just a couple other questions on product from my side and for us is, what are you excited about for product this year? Like, what are you looking forward to when it comes to product, or what product might bring in 2025?
Right. Well, I mean, my first thing is I want a wizard that plays and feels like a wizard. It's like that's the thing I've missed. Mastery Pack wizard would be awesome. Oof. And we can get some wizard cards. It's so okay. I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here about like the Ring of Roses from Verdance. It's so interesting because that card wants her to deal arcane damage, but she has no way to decompose in an arcane way. Like, all the decompose are physical. So there's this like inherent tension already. And I feel like it could be fixed with just giving her some wizard cards that decompose, or just like give her more of the arcane damage feel, which I feel like she's missing right now, and part of why she doesn't feel like a wizard. But Ring of Roses feels like, oh no, she's a wizard, but I'm like, but the rest of the deck is these attacks that decompose. Anyway, yeah, so my answer to that question is a wizard that plays and feels like a wizard, or an update to the current wizards to make them feel that way.
So she has 40 life. What more do you want?
Take away the life. I don't mind that.
I mean, as always, and anyone who's listened to Arsenal Pass for some amount of time will know that I'm a big limited aficionado, and I want exciting draft sets. That's really what I want. I enjoyed playing limited for most of last year, which I cannot say for 2023, unfortunately. I did not enjoy playing limited. Honestly, Outsiders was fine. Bright Lights, I did not enjoy playing. And am I missing a set in 2023? I feel like I am.
There was definitely a different set.
And we drafted Monarch at Nationals. Like, come on.
Oh, right. Yes. That. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That feels way longer ago,
right,
than just 2023.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. Anyway, so I'm really excited for exciting draft sets. That's what I'm after, and I'm looking forward to a balanced dosing of talents and non-talents. I think again this year, I enjoyed the juxtaposition of heavy hitters into MST. Aside from maybe some of the power level shifts, but I enjoyed that from a particularly limited standpoint. But even just figuring out the interaction of the format. I guess my last kind of thing on this, those are the things I'm looking for, is does Ice return this year?
So, I mean, technically Ice has already returned.
Yeah.
A month ago.
Does it return in a set? Yes, does it return in a set?
I wouldn't be surprised. It is at this point, I guess, the talent that we haven't seen for the longest. Because Light and Shadow, we saw them again, Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
But we saw Ice for the first time in Tales of Aria, and then we haven't seen it again, except Jarl. Yeah. So similar to how you can sort of look at classes that haven't gotten support in a long time and guess that the next set, like there's probably going to be a Ranger. Probably in set 16. It kind of feels like it, right? The last Ranger set was Outsiders, which is quite a while back. So by that logic, this is like Ice could come back. At the same time, there's also new talents. Like we're getting Chaos. There's a whole new talent coming out on Hunted. So
yeah, we had a new talent last year as well. So like we had Mystic last year. Is Chaos this year's talent, and that's what we get. Like James has said in previous interviews, and we are going back now Monarch Tales of Aria days to some of these interviews, but he has spoken about the use of talents and using them in the right ways, right? And not introducing, they were like, what's the next talent? Like people specifically, I remember asked James White, it was like, okay, we've had Shadow and Light, we've had Elemental as a talent, what's next? And James was like, why does it have to be what next? Why can't it be a revisit of the things we've done? That paraphrasing, but he spoke about, not necessarily it's not always going to be a new talent, right? So I do wonder, maybe it was just, Mystic focused last year, and obviously a return to Elemental in the back half of the year, but maybe it's Chaos, and then like you say, a return to Shadow and Light potentially, or maybe they even do say, okay, this year two talents, or what's even stopping them? Well, actually, I was going to say, what's stopping them revisiting Mystic again this year? But I hope there's a few things stopping them doing that. We'll see.
Yeah, I do like the idea of revisiting talents, to be honest. I think there's lots of interesting talent combinations, like talent class combinations that we just haven't seen yet. I mean, we sort of saw a little bit of a dip into Shadow Mech with like Teklovosen's alt, the hero he turns into. It's a Shadow Mech on it for some reason, but there's like no actual Shadow Mech cards, but like maybe Shadow Mech is like a space that could be. I think there's enough talent class combinations now. There's enough interesting ones that we could pause for a while and not have too many new talents. Like maybe, as you say, Chaos is the one for the year, and then we go into looking at these classes and giving them talents that we obviously haven't seen yet. I mean, Draconic Warrior is coming out in Hunted, which is exactly that, right?
Yes,
it's not a talent
Draconic
class combination we've seen of, but it's been a talent and a class that we've seen of. So more of that would be cool. And I'm also with you. Maybe this is a hot take, controversial, but I do like every now and then having a talentless set. Yeah. Like I enjoyed Outsiders for it being no talent, and I enjoyed Heavy Hitters also for it being untalented. So I'd be down for a non-talented set also, but also with the caveat, I do hope it does have the power level that can actually allow it to match up against the other talented heroes. I think Heavy Hitters for a while had that, but Outsiders came out and it became like Lexi was like the one that took the most from it, was the talented ranger. Yeah. So it might be a bit tough to get that. I guess, I mean, maybe not, because I mean, like Viscerai right now is totally relevant, and he's a talentless hero. So
Azalea got a really strong bump, right? And then once Lexi Living Legend became a big part of the format, it's just because that talented ranger was still there, to be fair. Also, Pankaj, I don't know what you're speaking about. Mechanologist is a talent. Don't you know this?
Yeah, I've heard that theory for sure.
I mean, they've just said it's not, right? Like I thought James just said it isn't. It's a class.
I don't remember that. I didn't know that actually was elevated to an actual question that was asked to him. I've just heard that as like a meme that's floated around.
I think it might be. If someone knows, drop it in the comments.
I didn't know they actually addressed it. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I just never took it seriously, so I just assumed it was just a joke that flies around, and then you're telling me they actually answered it. Okay, that's cool.
I have one last. You had a hot take there. I've got a medium. Maybe this is like a lukewarm take, because I think a lot of people agree with this when it comes to revisiting talents. I think I'm great that they're revisiting Draconic, because I think it's a good talent. It's a pretty well fleshed out talent. I don't think Shadow and Light are good talents. Like that's my take. I don't think they're particularly great for the game, and I think there's a lot more work to do to balance those talents, and it might even be a case of they stay away from them for a little bit of time until they work that out. I just personally don't think they're good talents, but
that's interesting. So we are going off topic a little bit, but I kind of do want to dive into that a little bit. So I guess from your perspective, what is the light and shadow mechanic, and what about it is bad? In a sense, or not bad, I guess. What about it is unappealing to you?
I think so. If I tackle light first, Soul is obviously the big tie to the light mechanic that we've seen so far. I think it's really hard to balance. First of all, getting cards into Soul, and then using cards from Soul, right? I think we've seen that on the you can just look at the paradigm between Boltyn and Prism. Like and obviously you can talk about, Prism's hero power was pushed, and they should never have printed auras that stuck around. Luminaris, and sure,
Luminaris was pushed.
That's fine, but fundamentally Boltyn's hero ability is terrible. So and I think a lot of it revolves around how you balance Soul. Interestingly, I think Light is the potentially easier one for them to make enjoyable and fit into the format. I think Shadow is really, really troublesome, and I'm not surprised they introduced Shadow so early, because I think particularly people on the design team at the time And are those people still there? And I think they're great people, great designers. But I think they were really excited about that prospect of introducing something that we've seen in other games. This idea of the Banished Zone and playing from graveyard and from cards that aren't in your deck and aren't in your hand. And I think that just as a mechanic, you've seen it in other games, it's really hard to balance. And I think it's even when they revisited with Vincent, right? Like I think they actually did some really good work on that, considering how tough it is to balance. But I think that just shows you that I don't think Vincent is a great outcome because it just is so difficult to get right. And so I would be happy with them, as I say, just kind of holding off for a little bit longer. It's really tough, I think. And it only gets tougher as you release more cards. And not only do you have to think about those cards in terms of what they'll do in a deck, now you have to think about what they'll do in a graveyard, what they'll do in a Banished Zone. And that is just, it's a lot of things to consider.
So my understanding from your take then is kind of these two talents flirt a lot with card advantage in a way that makes it potentially like problematic or very, very difficult to design around, where it's like the soul is like this additional resource, and depending on the hero that you are, like Prism making a free shield here and there, or converting into an angel from your deck or whatever, and Shadow obviously having actual cards that can play from advantage, that it's tough to balance around. I think I could see them landing in a space that feels fair. Like Vincent, I think actually feels fair, and I think Levia to a certain extent as well. They feel fair for being shadow heroes that kind of technically have access to an extra hand, if you will. And Prism, I think, in a sense, the soul part of it. I know New Prism, not Old Prism. Old Prism was nonsense, but that was because of Luminaris. New Prism, the soul part of it, the light part of it feels. I think that part of it feels balanced? Fine. Like
I think it's pretty balanced. Yeah, I actually agree.
Like the part of her that doesn't feel balanced is Spectra, but I mean that's Spectra. That's not balanced. Everyone knows that.
It's the illusionist part, right?
The soul. Yeah, it's the illusionist part. It's particularly Spectra, right? That one. But the light part of it feels okay, and similar to how the shadow part of Vincent and Levia feel okay. So so I guess I haven't completely felt that way, but I think you are completely right calling out that it is the closest to raw card advantage that this game has, as far as like the talents that actually provide that. And that's a dangerous space to play around in.
I mean, you synthesized what I said very nicely, and I should have just said that. But I'll just just on the back of things that you kind of spoke about there. One thing is, I still come back to the fact of, in my view, they've not gotten as much as I do. Like I said, I think light is easier as an approach. I don't think they've gotten soul right though, like in terms of how it's either applied to classes or applied in actuality. Because I look at Prism, it was a lot about the illusionist side, but then I look at Bolton and I go, well, there's kind of a little bit of a counterpoint. And then on the Vincent piece, I somewhat and Levia, I somewhat agree on Vincent. I think they've actually done a reasonable job on Vincent. For some reason, I don't find it particularly enjoyable to play, and it feels like it's just, maybe it's because I played Chain, it just feels throttled compared to Chain, but it doesn't feel quite right to me, something about the mechanic. And I know a lot of people who identify with Vincent and play that hero actually are players who never got the chance to play with Chain and Classic Construct, and I do wonder if there's a bit of a connection there. But the last thing I want to say about Levia is that I think Levia is in a spot where it's either going to be, now with its card pool and what it does, either completely busted or terrible. And I spent a lot of time with Levia, and I think there's a lot of powerful things about that hero, but the nature of the hero ability and how it interacts with Blood Debt, which I think is a fairly balanced thing, just means that I actually think as a player who wants to play competitively or wants to win, you can never consciously play that hero.
So when you say either she's busted or unplayable, you're talking from like a game-to-game perspective? Like not as this is the strength of the deck. Either depending on like upgrades she gets, she's either completely busted or completely unplayable. Because I look at it as like from a game-to-game perspective, she was busted in this game, but she was unplayable in the other game just because of how kind of high variance she can be, is kind of my take.
Yeah, but you just can.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, kind of. But you can never balance that. That's kind of the problem. Like if you ever balance it so that she doesn't ride those lows, like her highs are too high, and she's just going to be like, as soon as you give her a little bit more consistency, it's just going to be too good. Like it just is going to be too good. But I think fundamentally, that's because I think the hero is kind of broken. Like, it's just not. And when I say broken, I just mean it doesn't work. Like, I think that the hero is fundamentally a bit broken. So, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Huh? So that was our spiel on products, and with the tangent on Shadow and Light design as well. With that, should we move on to events that we can look forward to in 2025?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's look at the World Tour. I'm really excited, first of all, about the World Tour. I think this is such a good rebrand. It's really interesting. It's in some ways, such a quiet rebrand of, like, they didn't do a big fanfare of, like, we're rebranding, it's going to be the World Tour. They just came to Worlds and they said, here is the OP plan for 2025, and it's called the friggin' World Tour. Like, I think it's so cool. I think it's so well done. I think they've clearly been like, remember when Magic had the Premier OP system and they just don't anymore, and we do? Well, how can we be cool, even cooler, and do some of take some inspiration from that, I think, and honestly, I love it. So, what do we know? We've got a Pro Tour in London, England in April. Cool. Great location to go to. I'm a big fan of London. June, national season. July, Pro Tour in APAC. TBC, where that's going to be. Interested to hear your thought. My money's on Singapore. November, Worlds in the US. I'm going to put my money on East Coast because we were in West Coast for Worlds 2 years ago. Of course, we've got the calling circuit with 22 planned callings across the world. And then we've got our regional and local qualifiers, the seasons, which is going to be a Road to National season February, ProQuest season for the APAC Pro Tour in April, and then National season in June, and then ProQuest season in October for PT1 2026.
So regarding the July PT in APAC, the moment I heard APAC, I did go straight to Brian and ask him, is it Singapore? Because obviously I'd be very excited to go back there. And he didn't answer me, obviously. So I don't know. But yeah, my first guess was Singapore, or rather my first hope. Yeah. But I could also, part of me still feels like I could see it being in Australia, right? Like Australia or New Zealand. Like, it's kind of the home place of LSS. Part of me is like, we haven't had a big event there, like a big event. We had a celebrational, but we haven't had a tier 4 event there yet. And it's been, this will be the 6th year of Flesh and Blood. So part of me is like, maybe it could also be that it's APAC. It fits, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, like to your point, if it's going to be in Asia, why didn't they just say Asia, right? Like, I think the one thing that's holding me, I guess when I look at it just logistically and I look at what makes most commercial sense for them, I think that is when I look at callings in APAC, I don't know their returns, but I know the numbers. And Singapore has been the best for them from a numbers perspective. So to me, it makes sense that they would do it, unless they decided to do something in Hong Kong. Obviously, a massive community there. That would be the two options. I think from again, logistics standpoint, I think Singapore is a bit easier to do. So we shall see. And also, I've spoken about this on the pod before, and I know you were there. You were in the hall with me when he said it. But James White at first Singapore calling said, we are coming back to Singapore and we're going to do it bigger. And he could have just been referring to the second calling, but I always thought that meant Pro Tour is coming to Singapore.
I see. I thought the second calling kind of covered that.
Yeah,
that was
maybe.
my take. But maybe say that again at the second calling. You were there, right? I wasn't there at the second calling, so
I don't know what I was at the second calling. I don't remember him making mention of. All he spoke about the second calling was just how, I guess, amazing the community is and how excited they were to be back in Singapore. But yeah, I don't know.
It is an amazing community. Definitely shout out to all the Singapore and Flesh and Blood players.
I think it's the best community, I'm just going to put it out there. I think Singapore is the best community in the world. So people can challenge me. They'll be like, oh, Poland or these parts of the US or wherever. But that's my opinion.
It's pretty great. I did also want to talk about, we spoke about it at the top of the show, the whole Play of the Year thing that's going to be happening this year as well. Now, from a coverage perspective, that's something I'm very excited for, because that's something I think we've talked about this a lot on the back end. It's something that we do need to work on is player profiles and player narratives.
Yeah.
And this Play of the Year thing, I think, just sets us up very, very well to talk about it. Because I think that is, like, now as we, as Flesh and Blood coverage and the game matures, that's the thing that we need to start developing and inculcating, is bringing up these names, getting that stardom going on, getting people to tune in because of the player, because of players, which was kind of something that happened in Magic for a while, right? There's all these like famous names that people can talk about within the Magic circuit, and now with the Play of the Year, hopefully we can bring that to Flesh and Blood as well. I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a huge shout, because maybe we can quickly just touch on what the World Tour is, but yeah, so effectively, World Tour is at the end of this year. They're gonna crown it's gonna be done annually, but they're gonna crown at the World Championships the Player of the Year. I assume it's gonna be at the conclusion of the World Championships because that's the last major event of the year and then the season. So the World Championship can impact that. Oh, it does say that it's the final event of the season. It includes Battle Hardens, it includes callings, and it includes Pro Tours, and you can earn points. And then, the player that earns the most points is going to be the World Player of the Year, which I massively agree is much needed. I think about what you said around narratives and getting people to tune in for the players, not for the games necessarily. I think you need to give people reason to tune in for more than just the games, right? So the games is great, that's one thing, and if the format's healthy and it's great, awesome. But what if it's not quite the perfect format, or people are a bit it's a bit divisive, and we've seen this before, right? Give them another reason to tune in. The players, the narratives, the story, the coverage itself, right? And I think that's been something else we've been on a level up journey of, is just the coverage in general and the quality of coverage. But the narrative and the player focus has probably been missing apart from a handful of players, and this really gives you a lens to start to be like, oh, this player, this is their journey right here. They've been doing this. We saw them out here doing this, and then we've got an interview with them for XYZ reason. And I think that's that's really cool.
And we are starting to get more of that. Actually, particularly calling Chicago that just happened when Lucas Oswald and Michael Hamilton were playing in the semifinals. It was so great to be able to say the last time they faced off was the finals of the world premiere for Rosetta. The calling that was attached to world premiere of Rosetta. That was the last time we saw these two players, and now we're seeing them again in this living legend calling, playing the semifinals. And as the game matures, we're going to get more and more of that, and more of these narratives around players and these friendly rivalries. And all that kind of stuff. I love they're leaning into it with these little Player of the Year competitions that are happening as well, right? Sort of Brody and Michael right now are neck and neck at each other. They're both high. They're tied actually. They're tied for points.
Yep.
They're both tied. And Brody was telling me he was at Chicago and he's playing the Bellharden, and he was like, okay, if I do well enough as Bellharden, I can get the points, overtake him. And then they ended up both tying perfectly. And just having these stories around the players more so than just the games, as you pointed out, is going to be very, very good.
Yeah, and it also incentivizes, I think we're on a journey around how to incentivize players to play the game at a high level, right? And obviously an increased prize pool is fantastic. It's a $100,000 prize pool for the Player of the Year. So there's actually, there's two regional champions who each win $15,000. There's also second place champions, third place champions in the region, and then there'll be two regional champions for the World Player of the Year, which is, I think, is a cool way to do it. Because obviously, I think the one thing that's maybe missing at the moment is the support to be able to travel to some of these events. Yeah, great, Brody, Michael, you're going to see them at a lot of callings. You're not going to see a lot of other people at these callings because the infrastructure just isn't quite there yet, I think. And I think this is one step in that direction of rewarding people for making those journeys. And I think it's really cool because let's say I'm here in Australia with my friends, and obviously they've seen Brody and Michael a few times now, but what if Pudding Tam shows up, or Shomi Yamamura, or an Easton Douglas shows up, or Tarek Patel, whatever it is, or Simon Nielsen, because they're incentivized because they're currently in the top 15 players in the world from a World Tour points ranking standpoint, and they're fighting for that spot. Who doesn't want to be? World champion is great, right? To be the world champion, but it's so hard to do that. It's one weekend. And it does have to be your day, honestly. You can prep all you want, you can play as well as you want, but you do need some luck. Over the course of a year, though, and if you're playing at the top of your game, you can make it happen. There's more agency, or at least it feels like there's more agency there to make it happen, and the journey is longer, right? And people have more points to impact their journey when it comes to World Player of the Year. So yeah, I'm really excited for it.
And we've heard a lot of that happening in more discourse, right? More podcasts like this, or more content. We'll be like, oh, this person had a sick year.
Yeah.
I think, was it last year we were talking about Yuki? I think that year, she had an insane run. And I think recently, Xing is another one that I think of as someone who's just so incredibly consistent and just able to perform back to back, but hasn't gotten that win, but should definitely get recognition for this. And I think this Player of the Year thing is exactly that. And to your point about the travel, I think that's also why it's great that they have regional champions as well. So it's not just, hey, you're going to need to go fly all the way to the US from Singapore, from Hong Kong to, be to be a potential player of the year. No, you can be player of the year in your region and not travel that far to go ahead and get this.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So on that point, I guess where are you going to be this year? Where are we gonna see you?
So all the majors for sure, well, almost certainly,
Yeah.
Either playing or as coverage. That's we don't. While we know all these events in advance, we don't fully know who the coverage team is going to be. So I always make it a point to also qualify, just in case they don't ask me to come be a caster for whatever reason. So I do qualify, and then I might show up as a player if they don't ask me to cast. But if they ask me to cast, I'll usually just show up to cast. Aside from that, there's also Battle-Hardened Portland happening in February. So that one I'm going to be competing, and then I'll be there playing at it. Where are you going to be?
Well, my first protocol was going to be calling Christchurch, which is 2 weeks after.
Super soon?
Yep, I'm actually looking forward to that. That's my hometown, so I'm very excited to. Well, I say hometown. It's where I lived for a majority of my life. It's where I went to school, and spent a lot of my time. So I'm really excited that they have the calling. I think that's their first. I don't even think they've had a battle hardened. So I think this is their first, bigger than a regional event, effectively bigger than a qualifier event. So really excited about that. At this stage, I don't think I'm going to be in London, unfortunately, as much as I would love to be. I don't think I'm going to make it out to London. I'm still going to try and make it happen. It's I'm getting married in February, as a lot of people know.
I was going to say, is it too close to the wedding?
And then just like honeymoon plans and things like that. So I'm not sure, but I definitely will be at the APAC Pro Tour, and I'm going to try and dot in a few callings here and there. But yeah, I think it's so funny because they released like the World Tour and the Player of the Year, and it's like, oof, that's a big incentive to want to be at all these events this year for sure. I think that's always going to be on your radar as a competitive player, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll miss you at at Pro Tour London for sure. It's also my birthday right after the Pro Tour, so you'll be missing that. So what the heck, man? That's not cool. Anyway.
Man, I really owe Pankaj now.
yeah, exactly. Other than that, so I guess we don't have the full list of all the callings and battle hardens that are happening like later in the year. But I imagine anything that's like local enough to us, we will just be there to play. Do you plan to do much traveling? You talk about incentivize the Player of the Year thing being an incentive to travel for something. So I guess, would you travel further than you normally would to go attend a calling, for example? Like, okay, let's say calling Hong Kong. Would you show up?
I think it's gonna, for me, it's always gonna depend on. If you're asking me specifically, then my answer would be it would depend on the incentive to do so. Like if I'm really close to the top of my regional leaderboard, for instance, then yeah, I'm a lot more incentivized to do so and to do it. And I think that will be the case for a lot of players in that situation, especially I think callings in the second half of the year, you're gonna see some people be like, I'm making the trip out to this event because top 8 in this event could be what gets me Player of the Year, and that's insane to think, or sets me up so that I go to Worlds, and if I make cash at Worlds, I'm probably going to be in that top 3 of World, Player of the Year to cash the prize. So I think that is, I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people, and that's what happened in Magic when I think back to it. You'd be like, I remember going to a calling equivalent in Magic at like an October, November time, just before the World, maybe 2 months before World Championships in Magic, and there being like 10 of the best pro players in the world there at the time, because they were like doing 2 or 3. There was like a bit of a trip they could do where they could hit 2 or 3 in the space of a month, and it was like, yeah, they did it because they're incentivized to do so. So
I think we had that a couple of years ago too. I think weren't you part of the crowd that did calling Singapore on the way to PT level?
Yeah, I did. It was great. Loved it. Would do that again for, let's say, and I really would encourage LSS. I think me and Brendan spoke about this quite a lot. Like I wish they would have done more of this. They've tended to do a bit more callings or battle hardens after in a similar city. So World Championship Osaka, battle hardened Hiroshima, I think was Hiroshima. Was it? Yeah, the week after.
Like right after.
The week after.
Yeah.
I think they've done more of that recently, whereas I would love them to do, APAC, if we think it's in Singapore, the weekend before, we're going to Hong Kong for a calling. Sick. Love it.
That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
So in terms of formats, I see here in the show notes, you have something written on something you'd like to see from events this year. In terms of formats, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I would love a draft only calling. I'd like them to
draft also. So currently we have limited callings where it starts with sealed.
Yeah.
So you're saying you wanted to start with draft?
Yep.
Like the whole thing.
Yeah, I think they just they haven't got sealed right, and I don't think they should be particularly focused on it. I think that's fine, but in that case, let's just do draft callings. And it poses a bit of a challenge for like the structure of the event, obviously, and how they run it. But I think they can do it. They've done mixed callings before, which I know you know because you top 8'd one of them, where they did draft and class constructed, and literally day one was a draft. Like on the first, or yeah, but the first thing we did on day one was draft. So with all the players in the room, so they've done it before. They're capable of doing it. So I would like them to see, if they don't feel like the seal format is maybe quite up to scratch in terms of, actually not even quite. If they don't think the seal format is fantastic, then I think they should just use draft for these callings, or at least experiment with it and see how it goes. And I think, did I put this or did you put this? Class constructed only PT.
You put draft only calling. Oh, CC only PT. Okay, that was me. I was spoiling it a little bit.
Sorry, because I also would be down for that. So I was like, did I put that?
Oh, you'd down for. Oh, okay, great, awesome. So something that came to me. So the first year of Flesh and Blood's Pro Tour, we had the first Pro Tour ever. Pro Tour New Jersey was CC only.
It was.
And then after that, we had Lille, which was mixed. And then the year after that, we just had Baltimore, which was mixed. But I was like, okay, that's just one PT this year. When they announced that they were going back to 2 Pro Tours a year, I did have this pipe dream, total pipe dream, because I know they've said Limited will always be a part of Premier Play. But this pipe dream, like, we're going back to 2 PTs. The first time we had 2 PTs, one of them was CC only. Are we going to do that again? And they didn't this year, obviously. Amsterdam and LA were both mixed. But yeah, in terms of, if we're putting our pipe dreams out here, I'd say a CC only PT is something that maybe at some point in the future, maybe we're still too early and still want to maybe drive it home that, draft is something a top player has to be really, really good at. But I did enjoy the CC only PT of New Jersey, and I wouldn't mind coming back to it at some point. Maybe 2025 is too early, but yeah.
I'm going to be a bit of a party poo. I can't see it happening. As much as I'm down for a CC only PT, I can't see it happening simply for the fact that this game is so, in its current state, is so reliant on the competitive player. And if the competitive player base isn't being socialized with Limited and isn't being incentivized to buy and draft product, it's just a net loss for LSS when they could do a mixed format PT. So I can't see it in the current form of where Flesh and Blood is, but 2 or 3 years down the track, I definitely could, or if more Pro Tours were introduced during the year.
So, counterpoint to that,
go for it.
The limited portion of these mixed events, in terms of coverage, always has the lowest views.
I agree.
So in terms of advertising and marketing on that front, you could argue on the other front. I mean, I think your point is definitely stronger in terms of there'll be more product being bought and everything. There'll be more of a loss if you don't force people to draft, in a sense. But there is the other aspect of it in terms of how popular the stream is. I guess we don't know of recent memory how much more viewership a CC only PT would get because we haven't had one. But the argument could be made that the viewership would be larger for that, given how much it tanks every time Limited comes on.
Yeah, but aren't they kind of solutionizing that a little bit with more focus on players and less focus on the games, which is kind of what I was alluding to before. Is I didn't say this point, but the more focus on players means that when the games or the format isn't as stellar, aka people's kind of view on Limited a lot of the time, when it's like, okay, Limited might not be super exciting, or this draft format, people have seen it, or they're not super excited about it. I do have a counterpoint to that as well, which I'll get to in a second. But, it's like, okay, well, actually, we're following this person because if they 3-0 this draft, they are the world, they are the tour champion, or this is their narrative, or they're undefeated and Limited in Pro Tours this year or something. Well, whatever it might be, like focus on the player. Just quickly, if we look at the world premiere, particularly the first 2 world premieres that had a calling attached to them, the viewership was pretty good. And the interaction, I think about the heavy hitters and the MST world premieres and callings, the interaction and the viewership was actually pretty strong. And I get it, it's a new set, it's a brand new set, and that's the driver behind that. But it's not like people haven't watched Limited events before. So what can LSS take away from that and work on? Not an easy solution, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, great discussion. Well, look, honestly, I'm super pumped for 2025 Flesh and Blood. I think if I had to just kind of put a conclusion to all the things we've spoken about, I think the thing that has given me the most energy is this alignment of product and organized play. And this coming to the World Tour and coming to a schedule of releases that feels more considered than it ever has been before. And I hope that translates into just great product and great formats. So what about you?
I'm starting to feel rested enough and just really, really excited and energetic for engaging with the game again. I'm really looking forward to spoiler season. I'm at the point where I'm starting to itch for more spoilers, and I'm itching to like start brewing again, because it's been quite a few weeks of just break and like not really engaging with the game too much. At least from a CC perspective, I did touch a little bit on Living Legends stuff, so I could do the Calling Chicago. But in terms of the CC, the brewing, that sort of portion of it, and like the hardcore testing with people, it's been a bit of a break, and I'm just really looking forward to honestly just the hunted, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, agree. Cool. Well, that is episode 193 of Arsenal Pass. Thank you to all the listeners out there. Thank you to the Arsenal Pass patrons. And until next week, we'll see you in the next episode.